Okay, our next slide is the sycamore, and some of you may know the story about the sycamore and the slaves who came north during the Civil War. There was a song uh, that was called the Ghost Tree Song, and they talked about following the ghost trees to safety, which would be Ohio and Pennsylvania and Indiana, and Indiana mostly. Um, and it was the actual bark that they were talking about with the follow the ghost trees because it was pure white at the tops and in the middle. And so they could see them very well at night, and that's when they traveled. So the ghost trees. So the first thing I want to look at is the leaf, and you'll see that it has a stem and a fairly large base to that stem at the bottom part of it, not where it's attached to the leaf. That part there covers the bud of the tree, and we'll show that to you later, the bud actually. It covers the bud of the tree during the summertime when the leaf is green, and the reason for that is just to protect that bud a little extra and keep it from being chewed on by other animals like squirrels, or perhaps birds might even peck at it. So it's a protection. Now the leaf is 5 to 6 pointed generally, and you could call these lobes. Some of the lobes near the top, I think they would be defined slightly as lobes in between each point. So the leaves are covered with, there are quite a few leaves that are, no, sorry, there are veins that run off the base of the leaf, and they kind of look like they originate out of the stem, and actually they do, because they are gathering food and sending it down to the rest of the tree and to the roots as well. Okay, so now on the right you will see a sample of the bark on the lower part of the tree, probably where where you can pull it off. It sheds every once in a while, and these just fall off and reveal whiter bark underneath. And as you go up in the tree, there isn't very many of this dark type of bark. It's mostly just smooth white bark. And if you look at the top there, there is a sample of the bud of of a stem of sycamore, and that would be the terminal bud. Also down on the lower left, you can see a little better example of the one at the bottom there. It is purplish in the summer, real pretty, but it is covered up, so you don't see it until the leaves fall off later on. And the twig has different nodes. It is alternate in branching, so that you have no buds one straight across from the other, and you do have a terminal bud generally at the end of each branch. Then straight over next to the bottom of the bark, you can see what are the seed heads, or the seeds actually, coming from the sycamore. During the summer, the flower of the sycamore produces a bud, and it produces seeds for the next year, or for that fall and into the spring. So the circular ball that you see up there with a twig on it, or a stem, and that stem is connected at the base of where the flower bloomed, and that ball hangs down all winter, and in the spring or late February, this thing starts to shed its seeds, and that's what we see at the bottom of the bark is the seeds. So we have sycamore, and at the bottom is the ball. It's a little bit in the shadow there, but that little ball is where the seeds were actually attached. So they have they finally come loose and fall off. So we have sycamore, and its scientific name is Pinus occidentalis. It is in the Plantanaceae Okay, so the next slide is the cottonwood. It's eastern cottonwood, and the scientific name is Populus deltoides. The leaf is simple, and it has a stem at the base, as you can see, and it is attached to the edges of the branches, or the top, the very top of the branches. This is alternate again, and so we won't have opposite buds or opposite growing leaves. The leaves again have quite a few veins on them, and this time it has a sawtooth edge, and those are very, very common within a lot of the trees. A lot of them do have that kind of branch where they have just or leaf that has a stem and a leaf with sawtooth edges. So the stem is a little different. It is quite flat, and it has because of that, it has an ability to allow the leaf to sway in almost any kind of a little breeze, back and forth. It'll just go back and forth kind of with the flatness of that stem. And that allows in a heavier wind, it allows the leaf to go flip flop back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It creates kind of a soft sound that you can hear if you're around that tree when the wind is blowing. So they have a little bit different system there. The stem is, again, alternate, and at the base down here, it's actually the terminal bud. And the terminal bud has either several covers to it, or it is several buds, and I'm not sure which one those are in this one. So that's about it for that. I will look at, yeah, that's it. Okay, next tree is in the oak family, and the next few slides will be oak families. There are two members to the oak family, basically, a white oak and a red oak group. And this is the white oak group. White oak group leaves are generally rounded at the tips. This is a lobed or deeply cut leaf, and it has a really distinct pattern for the white oak. So it's fairly easy to recognize this. It's very consistent, and it has a short stem. And then the leaf below, if you'll look, the reason it's on it, that's the backside of the stem, which is a little different color usually. Sometimes they have hairs on them, but I don't think this one does. There are two round balls there on the veins, or near the veins, and these are insect galls that were put there by some type of insect, and then they lay an egg in there, and then this thing grows as time goes on during the spring and summer, and they will nourish, those things will nourish the insect, and it will come out and fly off and start the process again. This is Quercus alba, alba meaning white, Quercus meaning oak, and it's in the oak beech family. Fagaceae is the name of that family, and it is alternate. And the acorns for this plant are very, very sweet. And so lots of animals like them. If you want to taste them, you can. You could probably get away with it, but it still has tannins in them. And the tannins are what are not edible very well at all. So you want to stay away from it unless you really know what you're doing, I would say. Okay, the next slide is shingle oak. Shingle oak is a pretty famous oak because it is the only oak that doesn't either have lobes or pointed lobe type leaves. So it stands out as far as oaks go, and it is also famous because it was used to make shingles. Now, what the pioneers would do is they would fell a huge one of these trees and then take a riving tool and hammer it down on after they made cross sections about the size of length that they wanted for the shingles, and then they would basically split them wide open, and they cut very straight lines. So it worked for making the flat shingles that they needed. and they would rive them also with a draw knife and smooth them out, and they would put them on the roof for shingles and nail them down. So it's a pretty famous tree. It is alternate, again, has fairly small buds, and they have quite a few bud scales on them to cover them and protect them during the winter. So the leaf is simple, and it has a short stem, and veins come more at right angles than some of the past ones. And so those, again, produce food, or take the food from the leaf down to the root system, and also they take water and minerals out of the soil and run them up to the leaves and through the leaves to keep them healthy. So shingle oak, Quercus imbricarius, oak family, beech family, and so that's about it. Okay, this is another very large leaf and an oak, and it is has rounded tips, typical of the oaks, and you can see the stem is a little longer just because of the size of it, I think, and it has veins that come out and go through the lobes and probably spread out up near the ends of the lobes. The stem is upside down. Unfortunately, I put it on there upside down, but it does have small buds at the bottom there, which would be the tip of the stem, and then the top is where the stem is attached to the plant. And it's a little large, so it's pretty solid attachment. And acorns are capped, and they have lots of bumps on them and look hairy, and so they're very distinctive.